This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
And it's almost like if someone does try and have a theory or think outside of the box, it's like, well, where's the randomised double-blind placebo-controlled trial for that?
It's just like me as a practitioner, they can only say what they're allowed to say.
I had a lot of doctors say to me, I don't believe in this. I'm like, I'm sorry, are we at church?
Everybody's looking for the life jacket to stay afloat in the pond of diabetes or in the pond of recurrent miscarriages.
They'd rather go and get some medication, or they'd rather just accept that they can't do it, but they can do stuff about it. And I think that's so important. But it is a bit of a slog.
Yeah, I actually feel sorry for doctors a bit. I'm sure a lot of them go into medicine with these good intentions and they want to heal people and they want to help people. And then they're stuck in this system where they have to have 5-minute consults and just sort of rush people through.
I know some of the most prominent physicians in the world. Good friends with these people. None of them are recommending medicine to their children.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the health journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? In Season 1 of The Shift, we explore the fascinating field of gut health and help you discover what is really going on with your digestion, microbiome and health.
The gut is amazing.
Changes our concept of the human body. Become useless to the healthcare system.
We're always shifting. Your genes are shifting, your microbes are shifting, everything is shifting.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift. In part 1 of this episode, we dived into the deep dysfunction that occurs in our big food and pharmaceutical industries and how that has shaped our healthcare. In part 2, we're going to get some insights from doctors that have worked in the conventional medical model and look at some of the issues that they've encountered. To begin with, let's look at the actual practice of medicine. I know personally that I've had quite a few patients over the years that were mainstream medical practitioners, and they came to see me because they were burnt out, overworked, and not really able to practice medicine in the way that they intended. What do they think about the rise in chronic disease and our inability to cure it? Dr. Vincent Petro was one of the doctors I spoke to about this.
I think it's many things. It's the hours. At times I calculated I was working 100 hours a week. You feel dehumanized by putting in so many hours. And then the hopelessness, because you realize that what we were in was a disease management system, not a root cause resolution system. So a doctor in training was a doctor that was trained to use drugs to help people. And you thought, well, this is really noble, until you start to realize that the drugs never resolve disease. They just keep people in disease. So there was a part of it just intuitively that I knew, this just isn't the way I wanted to practice medicine. And so by the end of my residency, I was actually very disillusioned with medicine. And I called my parents and I told them I'm kind of at that crossroads again. And I said, it feels wrong to say this, but I don't know why I became a doctor, because I don't like the medical system in this country. What I have learned through my training is that I really don't like what we do.
One of the things that keeps coming up is the role of alternative ways of treatment as part of the medical model. It would seem that anything outside of the norm is very difficult to get uptaken, the obvious one here being the inclusion of gut health. So does it need to change, or does collaboration need to be better? One of the main differences between the naturopathic or functional medicine approach and the allopathic approach to medicine is the emphasis on symptomatic care versus treating the cause. I think there is a need for both, but I wanted to ask Dr. John OBrien what the difference between addressing a crisis in the body and treating the cause was.
Good question. When a patient comes in with recurrent miscarriages or systemic lupus erythematosus, the autoimmune disease lupus, or recurrent migraines, or arthritis, it doesn't matter what the symptoms are. When the patient comes in, it's like they've fallen over a waterfall and they've crashed into the pond below. They swim up to the surface and oh God, thank God I'm alive, right? Spitting out water, trying to stay afloat in this pond. And you're in the pond of rheumatoid, or you're in the pond of diabetes. You're in the pond and you're trying to stay afloat. But it's really hard to stay afloat because the waterfall keeps falling into the pond, so the water is really turbulent. You're living the lifestyle that caused the eventual problem that now you've got, and it's a turbulent lifestyle. So everybody's looking for the life jacket to stay afloat in the pond of diabetes or in the pond of recurrent miscarriages. So life jackets are good. You got to stay afloat. You can't drown. You need the meds. You take the meds. Don't be silly. But you don't stay in the pond. Swim over to the side of the pond. Get out of the water. Walk up the hill. Walk back up the river and figure out what fell in the river that eventually carried you downstream and you fell over the waterfall into the pond of diabetes. That's called going upstream. That's what functional medicine is going upstream to figure out why do you have what you have. While you may need a life jacket right now, you may need to take glucophage or metformin for diabetes or medication for migraines. You take the medication, but you don't stay in the pond taking the medication. You go upstream to figure out what happened. Where's it coming from?
You've heard a lot of client stories throughout this series, and you might be wondering if we could perhaps help you. Supporting people to shift is what we do best. Health is a journey, and we can help you to navigate this with one-on-one support with our clinical naturopaths, hypnotherapists and counsellors. If working with us one-on-one interests you, go to theshiftclinic.com and click on Shift with Us.
The Shift!
One of the things that my patients ask me over and over is, why don't their doctors look at all of the factors that have caused the issue? If there is science to show that things upstream are what cause the disease, why aren't they a focus of treatment?
It's not part of the medical model. It's not their fault. It's not what they're taught yet necessarily, although we are starting to see more integrative doctors. However, it's just like me as a practitioner, they can only say what they're allowed to say, and I can only say what I'm allowed to say, and it's hilarious. I hear it all the time. They're like, I wish I could advocate for what you're saying because it makes the world of difference. However, that's not what I was taught. That's outside of my realm, and I also don't have 25 minutes with the patient to sit there and talk about it. I'd be lucky to have 5. So the whole system is disjointed. So I think this is, again, where this integrative approach comes in, and really I'd say to patients, get as much information as you possibly can so that you're totally armed, that you can ask the right questions to get the outcome that you need, because it's not going to be the same outcome I need. It's going to be your own individualised approach to your healthcare plan.
Nat made a great point about doctors simply not having enough time to talk about it. One of our clients will spend 90 minutes with us at their initial intake, so it gives us the time to really go over all of the different aspects of their health. Most doctors' consults are 5 to 10 minutes, and it's unrealistic to expect that all aspects of your health can be covered in that time. I often have clients express their disappointment that their doctor has overlooked things, but I really don't believe that it's possible for them to look at more than 1 or 2 issues in a 5 to 10 minute consult. And as Nat mentioned, holistic care is really not part of the medical model. The other conversation here, I guess, is the inability for doctors to want to look at different ways of healing, to embrace ideas that are different from the traditional medical model. You see this in the pushback from some doctors when it comes to complementary medicines such as herbs and nutrients. It's not uncommon for a patient of mine to see a doctor who will tell them that nothing that they're taking works without any training in either herbal medicine or nutrition. There seems to be this us against them mentality, which I think fundamentally needs to change if we want to change the state of our healthcare system. As Dr. John OBrien put it, we need life jacket medicine. It is so important. But we also need to look upstream if we truly want to fix this. This is where I think the collaboration of a naturopath or other holistic practitioner can really help to support the patient to reach their goals. I asked Pedram Shajai why he thought that doctors have a hard time embracing new evidence and different ways of healing.
Look, it's really easy. I mean, I had a lot of doctors say to me, I don't believe in this. I'm like, I'm sorry, are we at church? Because here's the evidence in front of you. So now we are talking about you being campy and being part of a school of thought and part of a fraternity that is going to judge you for talking to anything outside of a cabal. Right. And so there's a lot of identity. And then there's also just like life, right? Like I know lots of doctors. I'm friends with, the best of the best in all this. And you know what? These people also have kids. They also sit in traffic. They go home. They got taxes. They got bills. They got all these just loans due. And so it is hard to put a doctor on a pedestal, expect them to continually improve and have all the answers every time. And if they don't say, you know what, I don't really know that, let me go research that, but the next time you have an appointment, let me go see what I can dig up on that. It's a lot easier for them to be like, here, next, right? Because the managed care, the third-party payer system has basically browbeat them into just, being on roller skates and just run around dispensing drugs all day. So there's a disincentive to think. There's no financial gain to actually be better if you're in the insurance model. And breaking out of the insurance model is a scary place to be because now you're like, wow, I got to charge money and advertise. How do I do this? I'm a nephrologist. You know what I mean? And so it's this scary wild, wild west where a lot of doctors just don't want to go.
Yeah, I actually feel sorry for doctors a bit. I'm sure a lot of them go into medicine like you with these good intentions and they want to heal people and they want to help people. And then they're stuck in this system where they have to have 5-minute consults and just sort of rush people through.
The most intelligent, hardworking people that I grew up with who went into medicine, I know some of the most prominent physicians in the world. I mean, good friends with these people. None of them are recommending medicine to their children. So what's happening is you have another generation of kind of technical Autobots who are just fine following some of these algorithms and just working for managed care, who are now coming in, and the free thinking and the kind of the real science, the empirical science of just questioning and finding new answers. It's disappearing outside of research institutions. So it's just the entire thing is breaking in a way that will not be sustainable.
And it's almost like if someone does try and have a theory or think outside of the box, it's like, well, where's the randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial for that?
And who's paying for that? Coca-Cola hasn't paid for that, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right? And so the money, we could get into the whole shit show that is medicine, but there is a lot of money influencing decision-making and saying this is what we're looking at and this is no longer vogue.
What was interesting is we have a family that's very close to us who also have a little boy with cystic fibrosis, so I fully knew what we were facing in terms of the health challenges that were involved. And I remember when he was diagnosed saying to her, oh, gosh, really need to get on the probiotic bandwagon. This is 10 years ago. And the hospital saying, oh, there's no real research around that. You could do it if you wanted. But what was really interesting was 4 years later when we're in there, one of the first things they did say to us is that probiotics would be really useful for him. And I was like, so funny, in 4 years, what I love is that if you really want to know what the next up-and-coming medical breakthrough is going to be, turn to complementary medicine and have a look what they're talking about right now, because that will be the next thing. And it'll be shunned upon, it'll be poo-pooed, it'll be told that, no, we're all crazy and we don't know what we're talking about. And then what do you know, all of a sudden it's a medical breakthrough. I think it's so funny. Let's just get together and sort it out.
100%.
Because don't get me wrong, medicine saves lives. There is no doubt. I am not disputing that. There's a place for everybody. It's just we need to ask ourselves the question, does it need to be the first point of call? And is it sustainable? And, for me, so many patients I see in the clinic, thyroid's a great example. They're prescribed medication for their thyroid, thinking that that's going to be the solution. And again, don't change anything else or look at why their thyroid is misbehaving, only to find that, oh, really, I have to take this forever? I'm like, well, actually, no, we get your body working properly and you don't. But it's not the first point of call. It's often the last point. And then you've got other challenges because, like you said, the microbiome and everything else that gets damaged in that process, it's not as easy to repair.
Healing is a journey that can take quite a lot of time, resources and motivation to get from A to B. I asked nutritionist Jenny Tichy what the biggest issue with people in the UK was.
I think people just trying to fast track. They've got themselves into whatever the situation is, whether it's that they're overweight, whether it's, increasingly I'm seeing, cases of Lyme disease, people being affected by fibromyalgia, and even in some cases, things like MS. People are being diagnosed with big, serious illnesses that are so far down the track, and they're not necessarily able to take that really long journey to get out of that. And I think I'd love to people not to be in that situation in the first place, But if they are, it's about trying to help people get out of that situation. But I just think part of that is because the messages that we receive are so skewed towards quick fix, whether it's, from sort of weight loss and diet supplements, or whether it's low calorie, low sugar, or whether it's, all the messages around veganism and vegetarianism and keto and paleo. And, people struggle. It's just too complicated and too much. So they'd rather not do that. They'd rather go and get some medication, or they'd rather just accept that they can't do it, but they can do stuff about it. And I think that's so important. But it is a bit of a slog.
Have you ever used Dr. Google? With the rise of the internet, we've moved from an era where doctors were the sole provider of health information to now anybody being able to research their condition online. I think overall this is a helpful thing, but Dr. Google has limitations. One of those is that clinicians like doctors or naturopaths have years of medical training. They understand the human body, biochemistry, diagnostics, and the disease process. So while information can be powerful, I think we need to find a balance with this. I asked Dr. Vincent Petro what he thought about self-diagnosis versus seeing somebody that can unpack your personal health story.
That's so funny you asked that, because I was talking to a patient about that today. And just this morning, I got a sticker that I put on my laptop. And for a long time, I would have not put a sticker like this. But now that I'm 15 years in my own practice, 20 years as a doctor, I realize that people really need to understand the shortcomings of doing a Google search and then thinking that you're an expert. So I put on my laptop a sticker that says, please don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. And, it is a little bit, it's a little bit out there, and it's something that I would have never done before. I always honored people's search for knowledge, but I've started to realize of late that people really don't know enough. And what happens is that a Google search starts to create an excess layer of anxiety, and you cannot heal the gut if you're anxious. You have to be in the parasympathetic. So going back to the very beginning, my whole life lesson was learning how to get into the parasympathetic state and balancing my sympathetics. And it's so amazing that was where my journey began, because that is everything about gut healing. You can do all the supplements you want. You can do the perfect diet. But if you're doing that stressed out, not sleeping, worried all the time, you're not going to get anywhere. So that aspect needs to be addressed. And it's the mind-body aspect, is the connection to the gut.
We are so proud with what we've created with season 1 of The Shift, but there is more to come. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
The Shift!
So what should you believe? Pete Evans has had a lot of pushback about his messaging, but I guess the question is, why do people get so defensive? I think it's really important to do your own research, but you also need to look at what is behind what you're being told.
Have an open mind, be skeptical, even with anything that I share. I encourage people, don't believe me. Look at the resources or the people that I've interviewed. Check out their credibility.
So what is the best way to approach your healing journey? From this conversation, we've uncovered that the allopathic medical model on its own may not be the most conducive to healing your body. In our experience at Shift, we know that healing is a journey that takes time, patience, the right support, and also the right information so that you can do what's best for you. I loved what Dr. Marvin Singh had to say about this.
I think before you start making any sort of plan, it's just to stop, take a step back, and look at what's going on in your life. You can kind of break it down into different categories of exercise and nutrition and stress and all that kind of stuff, and that can kind of help categorize it for you in your mind. And then the most important thing to remember when you want to make the shift is that Don't make the whole shift at one time, because you can't. You're just a human being, and you can't expect yourself to go from 0 to hero in 5 minutes. It's a process. That's why it's called the lifestyle medicine. That's why it's called For Your Life. It's not, a crash diet or a crash exercise plan to lose 10 pounds before you go to this wedding so you look skinny for everybody, because that doesn't last you very long. The most important thing to remember is that it takes time. It takes time to make changes. It takes time for your body's chemistry to shift. It takes time for the microbiome to shift and what the microbiome is doing. It takes time to turn genes on and turn genes off. And that, if you do a little bit every day, or you do something different every week, then by the end of the year, you'll be a totally different person. So it's okay to spend a year to make that shift. It's okay to spend 5 years to make that shift, as long as you're making the shift.
I'm sure if you're still listening, I've got you thinking about some things. In my book, Get Well, Stay Well, I talk about this concept of sick care versus health care. I know that we can turn this around and make our healthcare system about health rather than disease. There are so many parts to this that it can seem overwhelming. But as Marvin said, we just need to do one small thing at a time and we'll be able to make the shift. In the next episode, we're going to move into an area that's not often looked at in the gut health story, but it is one of the most critical: emotional wellness. You don't want to miss this one.
Coming up on The Shift.
So to me, the emotional connection is literally when we swallow our feelings.
And we survived as best we could in a threatening environment, whatever it was.
If you're just treating the gut with food and supplements and, what you're eating, then you're only treating it 1/3 of the way.
What I don't like is this unrealistic expectation of what health is.
And it is everything that is, problematic.
By now, you might be beginning to wonder what the health of your gut is like. To find out more, take our free online assessment at theshiftclinic.com/quiz. It only takes 5 minutes and you'll get a great report with some suggestions to get you started.
The Shift!
This series is produced by Must Amplify. Hosted by Katherine Maslen. Executive producer Ronsley Vaz. Music and sound design by Shade Furlong. Thank you to all of our experts. For more details on them, go to theshiftclinic.com/gut.
Still listening? Join the conversation about gut health at theshiftclinic.com/group.
The Shift!
Thank you for listening.
Every listen or download of this show
and hence this voice
directly funds the ending of sex
and human trafficking.
A voice for a voice.
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 Find out more at amplifyimpact.com.